Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Public Safety Committee. I am Mark Conway, Chair of the committee and representative of the 4th District. I'm joined today by committee members, Vice Chair Zach Blanchard of the 11th District. Thank you, Chair. And Paris Gray of the 8th District. Representing the Mayor's Office, I've got Tyler Schnella. And committee staff for the committee is Tony Leva. Today's committee is to hear LO 26-0145, Legislative Oversight, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, MONSE, for the purpose of conducting oversight of MONSE in light of findings from the Office of the Inspector General, examining gaps in oversight, financial controls, data tracking, and the protection of sensitive juvenile information, and ensuring that stronger transparency, accountability, and safeguarding all MONSE programs effectively to support public safety and rebuild public trust. We're here today because I believe that everybody in this room shares the same goal. We want city government to work, and we want it to work the right way. We want programs, policies, and public dollars to be used effectively, responsibly, and in ways that truly serve the people of Baltimore. That's especially true when it comes to programs designed to support our young people. When the city creates youth initiatives, families should be able to trust in those efforts, that they're well-planned, transparent, managed properly, and delivering real results. Our young people deserve more than good intentions, and they deserve real results. They deserve programs that are structured, accountable, and capable of making a real difference in their lives. Our job today is to ask honest questions, identify gaps, and to make sure that improvements are made where they're needed. The picture revealed by the OIG's report and the evaluator that MONSE commissioned is deeply concerning. We must measure this program in outcomes, not intentions. At the end of the day, trying hard is often not good enough, especially for our kids. Considering the importance of this issue and the immense public trust and the considerable public resources invested in its success, we must weigh whether this approach was fit for purpose. And most importantly, it's clear that we must urgently interrogate and the impact that it had on young people that it sought to save. So with that, we have in attendance today MONSE and the Inspector General, Isabel Cummings and Stephanie Mavronis. We're going to start off first with a presentation from the Office of Inspector General. And if you could introduce yourself and your team.
Good afternoon. My name is Isabel Mercedes Cummings.
Can you lift up the mic just so we can hear you clearly?
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, Honorable Councilman Conway and committee. Thank you very much for having us. Again, my name is Isabel Cummings. I am the Inspector General of Baltimore City. And over the years, this office has, on the response of the citizens, done numerous investigations into oversight based on waste, fraud, and abuse. Our office has investigated this office several times, and we have had numerous reports. I'm going to turn this presentation over to Deputy Matthew Neal so that he can go through with this honorable committee the various findings that we were able to have.
Thank you, Chairman Conway and honorable council members for having us here today. My name is Matt Neal, and I'm the Deputy Inspector General. To start, I should provide some context for our reports. OIG investigations are initiated through our hotline, which receives over 800 complaints a year from citizens and city employees. Before a report is issued to the public, the OIG issues a longer, more detailed report to the mayor, the city administrator, the city solicitor, and relevant agency leadership. The OIG provides these reports so city leaders have information that could help improve city operations or address ongoing issues. As voted on by the citizens, the OIG is mandated to investigate not only fraud, waste, and abuse, but to also promote efficiency and accountability in city government. It is important to note that these reports are not intended to be adversarial to the agencies or city leadership. It is quite the opposite. I cannot stress enough that the Inspector General, our team, and I all want the city and its programs to be successful because we work for the people. We believe in the city, and it is why we work hard to do our job. On a personal note, I've lived here my whole life. I'm raising my children here, and I would never want to be anywhere else. As the city government, I believe we are stronger when we work together. That does not mean that there are not disagreements. It means that we continue to work together even when we disagree, because government serves a larger purpose. During our Department of Public Works solid waste investigation, DPW leadership significantly cooperated and responded promptly. DPW's responsiveness to the issues resulted in them making great strides to better the work environment for their employees. Today, we will discuss a youth program. I think everyone in this room can agree that programs for kids in the city are important and a worthy cause. At the same time, these programs also deserve proper oversight for the same reason. They impact our city's youth. With that said, we respect Monty's dedication to its mission, and we do not question the purpose of Monty's work. We solely provide information regarding the execution of that work. Sometimes to understand the path forward, we must look backward. We can't be afraid to look back or to inform the public of what has been learned and how improvements can be made. I will now provide an overview of some of the cases that our agents have completed involving Monty. Since 2020, the city has paid for Microsoft Teams and is used citywide as a messaging and virtual meeting platform available on city devices. Last year, the OIG issued a report regarding Monty's purchase and use of Slack, a third-party messaging platform software. In 2021, Monty requested a waiver from Baltimore City's IT agency, BSIT, for approval to use Slack. BSIT asked for more context about why the Slack subscription was needed and why the city's existing communication platforms did not meet Monty's needs. Monty replied they utilize Slack workspaces to collaborate with community members daily. However, Monty employees reported to the OIG that Slack was only used for internal communications and not with external community members. Monty did not refute these statements in its response, which means Microsoft Teams could have potentially sufficiently provided similar capabilities. When we learned of the large volume of Slack messages and files being transmitted weekly, the investigation reviewed how secure these communications are. The OIG learned that BSIT is unable to manage and monitor Slack messages. At the time of Monty's request for Slack, BSIT asked Monty if Slack would store, process, or transmit personal health information, personally identifiable information, criminal justice information, or other sensitive data that shall not be released to the public without appropriate approval. Monty replied that it would not. But when the OIG received Slack messages in June 2025 by subpoena request, the law department wrote they had made redactions pertaining to an individual's medical information, attorney-client privilege communications, and potential student record information from the Slack messages. The OIG recommended in the report that BSIT configure access for third-party messaging platforms to ensure data is protected. The OIG also recommended that city agencies inform the law department when using third-party messaging due to potential litigation holds for communications and the public's right for Maryland Public Information Act requests, also known as MPIA. As part of the investigation, the OIG reviewed a MPIA request for Monty that requested all electronic communications and another that explicitly asked for Slack messages. In response to both requests, the city did not provide Slack communications, which gives concern whether a Slack search was conducted. For this reason, it is important that agencies make the law department aware when they are utilizing a third-party communication platform agency-wide. In June of last year, the OIG received a complaint regarding Monzi's Sidestep pilot program. Sidestep was a pre-arrest diversion program with the goal of providing youth 17 or younger with an alternative to the formal justice system and with contracted assistance from community-based organizations, typically referred to as CBOs. To qualify for Sidestep, a participant had to be a first-time offender, and the offense had to be a Category 2 offense, such as shoplifting, larceny, or unauthorized use. Sidestep operated between 2022 and 2024, and only in the Western District. Monzi paid an evaluation consultant $24,999 to complete an assessment of the program. The evaluator's assessment found a lack of case plans for youth, available data, and follow-up activities. The evaluator claimed the most impactful data deficit was that Monzi did not provide the evaluator with access to the participating youth who the program was designed to serve and their parents. This access was not provided even though the evaluator's contracted scope of work included surveying participants and their family for feedback on their program. The evaluator determined Monzi was not in compliance with its own process for tracking youth activities. Additionally, Monzi had one employee dedicated to Sidestep, a decision which the evaluator determined sets up the program and its sole staff person for failure. The evaluation concluded that the members of the Sidestep work group believed in their firm judgment that the program was not ready for expansion. It is important to note that this evaluation was completed in December 2023, but the OIG did find similar issues with the 2024 Sidestep referrals and contracts. Then, in June 2025, Monzi spoke before this city council, and its budget request included the goal of expanding Sidestep citywide. The evaluation was not discussed or provided, meaning the evaluation's findings were not given to city council. Monzi reported, in terms of performance metrics, that only 14% of the 51 Sidestep participants recidivated within 6 months after they were enrolled in the Sidestep program. 6 months was the metric that Monzi used for the program's performance. Rates after the 6-month period appeared to increase to over 40%, according to information the Department of Juvenile Services had provided to Monzi. The OIG requested clarity from Monzi on the recidivism rate after 6 months, as insight into that available data could help inform program improvement. Monzi refused to provide clarity, citing that the OIG's request was beyond the established key performance indicators for the pilot. Additionally, Monzi wrote in their response that expenditure data for the Department of Juvenile Services grant for partial Sidestep funding was not fully reconciled in Workday. In fiscal years 2023 and 2024, Monzi did not appear to bill the Department of Juvenile Services for approximately $357,000 in grant funds. The investigation revealed approximately $694,000 was issued to 15 organizations and one evaluation consultant for the pilot program. Monzi allowed these organizations to use city funds for non-Sidestep activities and clients. The money was not restricted to Sidestep youth, as the Board of Estimates award memo had previously indicated. Monzi explained this was due to a limited number of Sidestep participants. Some organizations' contracted scopes of work stated they would be serving youth up to the ages of 25 and 24, much higher than the maximum Sidestep age of 17. As part of the OIG's report process, the OIG always gives the opportunity for agencies to respond to the findings before it is released to the public. The OIG received Monzi's response and published its response along with the OIG's public report. As part of publishing Monzi's response, the OIG did not include the large file attachment that Monzi provided due to the file size and it containing confidential employee information. The OIG noted on Monzi's response that the attachment was not included for the synopsis due to the large file size. Monzi issued a statement the next day claiming the OIG doctored its response. Doctoring a document means it was deceptively altered. Monzi included the full file attachment as a link in their statement, which the public could view and download. The file contained an employee's ID number and their personal payroll data, which is protected by MPIA. The OIG notified the law department of the improper disclosure, and the link and statement were quickly removed. The OIG sidestep investigation continued with additional requests to Monzi. In October 2025, the OIG requested contractor invoices and supporting documents that were submitted to Monzi for payment and additional data. In December, the OIG received a response to the data request. Then, nearly 3 months after the October request, the OIG received over 200 pages of redacted financial records. On January 20th, the OIG issued a subpoena for the unredacted records. No response was received, and the matter is currently in litigation to enforce the subpoena. The OIG issued a second report in March of this year. Despite the invoice documents being limited to the redactions, it is important to note the OIG did receive hundreds of unredacted invoice documents from Monzi. But any redactions that are made limits an investigation and its impact. The OIG's review found 2 organizations received payments for fraudulent invoices submitted to Monzi. This matter has been referred to law enforcement for criminal prosecution. At this time, we are unable to discuss further, as that could interfere with any ongoing criminal investigations. In response to the OIG's data request to Monzi, there appeared to be a lack of program data and documentation available. Monzi did not track voice-to-voice contacts or meetings for each youth during the pilot program. Only 24 of the 51 sidestep youth had a case note entry, and case note entries were not timestamped in the software's database. The lack of case notes could indicate Monzi was not monitoring or tracking diverted youth in a measurable way beyond the recidivism rate. Although the sidestep policy states Monzi would implement service models and case plans for youth, Monzi did not have these records. Monzi added that the database used during the pilot did not allow for attachments to be uploaded. No records were found of youth assessments, and only 3 of 51 participants had documented referral forms. According to Monzi, during the pilot, the data management system did not have a recorded metric that captured the success of the youth placement. Due to the lack of case notes, supporting documentation, and follow-up with the youth, the investigation has not been able to corroborate Monzi's claim that 48 youth referrals were completed successfully. The OIG also found a data breach occurred. A Monzi employee sent post-arrest information for over 700 people, many of which were juveniles, to a personal Google account that belonged to a relative. The diversion table contained names, dates of birth, and specific arrest charges. Monzi was not aware of the exposure until the OIG report, which underscores the importance for the OIG to have direct access to records. In Monzi's March response to the second sidestep report, Monzi wrote that sidestep as it previously existed will not be expanded citywide, yet it was listed as part of the legislative priorities for the city's state legislative session this year. The access to sensitive juvenile records has also been expanded to the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success and the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement. In closing, the OIG found the evaluation paid for by the city was critical of Monzi's management of the sidestep pilot program and not shared with City Council. A lack of documentation, data, case plans, and follow-ups with youth were also noted, as this information is vital to determine a program's short-term and long-term success. The OIG recommends stronger contract management and verification of invoices. Lastly, the OIG's direct access during this time period helped the OIG make Monzi leadership aware of a data breach and fraudulent invoices. Again, the OIG does not question the purpose of the program or the citywide expansion of the program if that choice is made. We are merely looking back so what was learned is not forgotten and can help with future decisions, especially for programs that are focused on the city's children. Parents and kids deserve effective oversight and accountability for these programs so that the best possible outcome can be achieved. Thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to speak today, and we are welcome to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Director Neal. I'm going to turn it over to Director Membronis. If you could introduce your team and then give your presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair Conway, Vice Chair Blanchard, and honorable members of the Public Safety Committee, partner organizations in the audience, residents of our city. I'm Director Stephanie Mavronis of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, and we appreciate the opportunity to share this presentation with you all today. Now, this is a public safety hearing, and I do want to start here. Our partners at BPD aren't here, but it's important to ground the conversation that we're having in the work and mission of MONSE, of our partners at the police department and many other organizations who have contributed to this historic and ongoing progress, year-over-year reductions in violence that are quite frankly redefining the narrative of Baltimore as a city. This progress continues, and you could see over the 4-year period, a 60% decline in homicides, a 51% decline in non-fatal shootings. This is not by accident. This is the result of having a coordinated, comprehensive public safety strategy. We are a relatively brand new city agency. Mayor Scott established us at the start of his first term in December 2020 in one of his first acts as mayor. We're responsible for coordination of the Comprehensive Violence Prevention Plan and implementation of these strategies. We're here before this committee frequently. I'm someone who personally and professionally believes in transparency and demonstrating it. We share information, we share data, and answers to the questions of this committee. That commitment continues today. I want to share this slide because it helps put into context where the youth opportunity and youth diversion work that we're here to talk about fits into our overall portfolio. It is one slice of the broader work that our agency is tasked with. And I'll talk a little bit about where this work stands today and where we're going in the future as well. Youth diversion is a critical part of Baltimore's public safety ecosystem. We all know how critical early intervention is for our young people, being able to divert them. We often hear the narratives of a revolving door of young people who were arrested one day showing up again the next day. The program that we're here to talk about was a pilot initiative that was seeking to address some of that, seeking to intervene early. And while we will not be operating sidestep in the future, youth diversion work will continue, and it's for those reasons that it's critical that it does. Let's talk about what the Sidestep pilot program, which started in 2022 and ended in 2024, was. This was a limited pilot program that operated between those years only in the Western Police District, in which BPD Western District officers, as part of the design of this pilot program, would divert eligible first-time offenders to one individual at the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, our youth opportunity coordinator, with the goal of that young person being connected to appropriate services. This concept was envisioned and developed by youth and community members in the Western District coming out of the Baltimore uprising in 2015. That history is important. There was a goal of reducing unnecessary interaction with law enforcement, connecting our young people to community-rooted services that had the power to transform lives and reduce recidivism. For those of us who were in the city in 2015, you remember where we were at. You remember where we were with our young people and the relationship with law enforcement. This work was one of those pieces of how we make sure our youth feel valued and like they have an opportunity to change and transform. And these kids are present, they're our future. Sidestep came out of those conversations and then was mentioned in the Comprehensive Violence Prevention Plan that came out in July 2021. If you go back to that document, you'll see the reference to initiating and launching this pilot program really to make sure that we understood what worked, what needed to change before we take on this effort in a broader sense. And so this pilot program, was always a limited test of concept to inform future youth diversion work in our city. Monty did contract with an evaluation partner in 2023 to review this pilot program before any decisions were made about scaling to other districts or to other parts of the city. This evaluation certainly identified opportunities to strengthen program operations and improve oversight and redundancy. The evaluation did determine that the program was not yet ready for further expansion, something that for the interagency group of partners that were meeting on a regular basis to discuss this work, discuss our partnership together, we agreed with that. We agreed that work needed to happen to change. And so while our conversation today is prospective in nature, rooted in how we've responded to identified opportunities for improvement, it's also important to look at the documented impacts when the Western District pilot was operational over those 3 years. 51 first-time youth offenders under the age of 18 were diverted during the years that this pilot program was active. All of these youth were from the Western Police District because it's the only district that we were active in. And we found that 48 out of 51 of those young people successfully completed their service provider placement. The numbers tell one story, but the qualitative information that comes out of it also tell an important story as well. We saw a range of positive outcomes for youth that were referred. Youth securing employment, youth connecting with mental health services after being disconnected for 2 years, youth successfully completing group mentoring programs, even supporting the young people's families. We've connected parents to vocational training and jobs. We saw young people who went through this program who went back to their schools and achieved perfect attendance at school, something that was not the case before. We saw even young people, at least in one instance, resuming attending school after not attending for a long period of time. Do we have plans for more robust measurement, key performance metrics, and interagency success measures as we think about this interagency youth diversion work in the future? Yes, absolutely. But we also should not lose sight of those youth who were served during the pilot period, their stories, and those of their families. This agency, under my leadership as director, is committed to transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. And it's for that reason that we sincerely appreciate the work of the Office of Inspector General, the work that the team has done to alert us to issues that we might not otherwise be aware of and make recommendations for our consideration. I personally take evidence of fraudulent invoices, overbilling, or any other action that impacts public dollars that are invested in this most important work of improving public safety extremely seriously. We will take every action available to recoup taxpayer funds in partnership with the law department. And this OIG report has been referred to the law department in order for them to be able to take the appropriate action. But I also must say that the continued examination of the former pilot program is retrospective in nature, and the findings do not reflect current agency operations, which are significantly stronger today than during the pilot period, which started more than 4 years ago under a former director and concluded nearly 2 years ago. Since 2024, leadership within this agency has prioritized organizational changes. We've overhauled agency financial processes and procedures. Frankly, we have also made significant staffing changes within the agency after I officially was named director. Looking ahead, Monty, in partnership with the Baltimore Police Department and Department of Juvenile Services, has re-envisioned and redesigned a model for youth diversion for some first-time offenders, using lessons learned from the pilot and the evaluation that was conducted. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing since the program ended in 2024. We focus on strengthening these internal oversight mechanisms and standard operating procedures. I want to bring the conversation up to speed with the Monty of today and discuss some of the work that's been taking place. First, I oversaw staffing changes, including program-specific staff and financial staff. in response to a holistic review that I conducted of gaps and a need for greater oversight in different areas of our agency. We have a large charge. It's important that our organizational structure reflects that. And so I've been extremely intentional in my time as director in making the changes that are needed to make to ensure that our work can continue and continue in ways that are sustainable. We increase redundancy and managerial oversight of our youth opportunity efforts through the creation of a new deputy chief for community engagement and opportunity. This oversees the entire youth opportunity portfolio and some of our interagency work with law enforcement. We also added additional fiscal oversight support through the establishment of the role of Finance Operations Coordinator. This is a role that directly supports program managers within our agency who manage and work with outside organizations around dollars that we grant to ensure that they are supported and that they are adhering to financial policies and procedures. Second, our agency has implemented a formal multi-step review process to assist with better tracking of agency programming and invoices, as well as management of our finances in Workday. Our program managers within the agency have been trained and retrained on this process with oversight from the Chief of Finance and Chief of Staff within MONSE. MONSE's new Chief of Finance, who joined us last year, has deep knowledge of the Workday system. She's been integral in not only ensuring smooth operations today, but correcting the challenges with prior grants in Workday. We heard about unreconciled grants. We have spent a significant amount of time over the 2025 calendar year and this year making sure that those old grants are properly reconciled, that the system is working the way that it should so that we also have the appropriate window into our operations. The standard operating procedure in place today ensures multiple layers of oversight, allowing for timely review and approval of invoices, as well as preventing duplication of payments or unapproved spending. This was in part supported through the city audits process. Some of you may remember, and the audit of MONSE financial controls that was released in November 2023. The agency implemented the recommendations coming out of that audit. We also retrained all staff who play a role within the agency's subrecipient portfolio. And we're seeing better outcomes. We're seeing a better process for the partners that we work with. We're seeing invoices being paid on time. We're seeing clear and reinforced review processes, stronger subrecipient monitoring within our agency as a whole, and we want to continue to stay on that trajectory. Additionally, we've implemented agency-wide case management standards that will apply to the youth opportunity portfolio when this work launches in the future. This keeps a common standard within all of the direct service provision offered by this agency, including our victim services portfolio, including our reentry services portfolio. This sets a standard for not only the frequency of contact, but also how contacts must be documented in the system. MONSE also has plans within the future of our youth opportunity work to work directly with Department of Juvenile Services to monitor recidivism for all program participants on an ongoing basis, not limiting ourselves to a 6-month success measure that was set for the pilot program, but allowing both of our agencies to monitor participant recidivism in a real-time and ongoing basis. This aligns the recidivism measures with the same kinds of standards that we see within our reentry services work, as well as with our group violence reduction strategy. Finally, as mentioned on this slide, MONSE has improved our data systems and tracking. For youth diversion work, this has meant building a new system that's more conducive to tracking case notes using the Microsoft Dynamics case management system. This system will also give the Department of Juvenile Services secure direct access to share records digitally within the system, eliminating the need for sensitive data to be transmitted over email or on sheets of paper or on people's individual devices. The data will only be accessible within that system. And so we will facilitate the tracking of time-stamped case notes in this system as well. It's something that the old system did not allow for, but the new system will absolutely help facilitate that. This also ensures that only authorized staff with approved credentials are the ones who can access these secure, protected records in the system. Our staff have been trained and will be trained on data management expectations and this system before the next stage of this work begins. And as you see on the slide, MONSE's formalized standards for data transmission and protection of client-level data for all staff who utilize the data systems. Let's bring the conversation to the interagency youth diversion work under development today. As I've mentioned, the Sidestep pilot ended in 2024. It's no longer active. Sidestep, as it previously existed, will not be expanded citywide. And the future of this work is still under development to implement our lessons learned, to respond to also to changes, quite frankly, in juvenile crime since 2022, and build out the victim support protocol and network of youth serving providers. From 2024 to the present, we've taken these lessons learned, the findings of the evaluation, input from our partners at the Baltimore Police Department, and a renewed partnership with the Department of Juvenile Services to outline the future of this work. And so we've built the core infrastructure needed to ensure sensitive juvenile information is protected, that we have the right safeguards and oversight in place, both through the system and through staffing, and that data is tracked securely and in accordance with the law, as well as our internal case management standards. The tracking of more robust and multifaceted key performance indicators will serve as a guidepost and a management tool like we do in many of the other programs across our agency, allowing interagency partners to make adjustments in real time while ensuring positive youth outcomes for those that we're entrusted to serve. Finally, there are a number of things in progress that I want to highlight. First and foremost, my staff internally is conducting an internal review of program expenditures from the Sidestep pilot, really with a focus on ensuring that program expenditures took place within the context of the approved scopes of work and budget, that we have supporting documentation for those expenditures. We, like I said earlier, will take every action available to us in partnership with the law department to recoup taxpayer funds that we find are misspent. 15 participating organizations are a part of that process who were working with us during those years in fiscal 23 and 24. This audit is ongoing with completion expected by the end of the fiscal year. For all of our grants management efforts, we follow established protocol as a city agency. We work with the law department to facilitate strong oversight of our partnerships, including in those rare instances, and they're rare, but they've happened, those rare instances where we need to recoup funds. We're also in the process now of finalizing a memorandum of understanding with DJS, which will help govern the future of this work. We're conducting regular and ongoing staff training to review roles and responsibilities established in the standard operating procedures that I've mentioned, including our finance process and data system. And we'll continue to work in partnership with the mayor's office and our oversight partners to ensure our policies and programs reflect best practices, uphold the highest integrity, and deliver, most importantly, meaningful results for Baltimore's youth and communities. And with that, I will end it there and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. I'm going to open up to questions from the committee. I've got a ton. I'll start myself. Director, when exactly did we decide to discontinue the Sidestep program?
In the fall of 2024.
And did your office tell the press in May of 2025 that we were going to expand that same program over the summer?
What are you referencing from May of 2025?
I believe you guys told the press, it's noted publicly, that we were going to expand the program in the summer, so that we want to expand it.
So we did want to expand. I think I mentioned the importance of this work, how critical it was, but we continue to need to work with our interagency partners to ensure that whatever we're doing is at the highest level. You heard from my presentation that when this pilot program operated, we were working directly with the Baltimore Police Department, who individual officers in the Western District were referring cases via telephone to a staff person in my office. Through our interagency discussions, through collaboration with the new secretary at DJS, we've also determined that Department of Juvenile Services is the most appropriate partner to make those referrals to us. This takes the level of discretion out of it from the police department perspective. It allows them to focus on their role. It allows young people to all come through a common system and move from there. So we needed more time. So while that was an intention, Chair Conway, we needed to continue to develop this, and we've all talked here today about the importance of this work and getting it right. We're never going to rush that.
Yeah, a couple things here. One, we said we were discontinuing it. And then shortly thereafter, we said we would expand it citywide. And then shortly thereafter, for the 2026 session, the mayor's office did a press release. And in that press release noted that one of the priorities, and this is listed in the report, one of the priorities was to expand Sidestep citywide. So I'm hearing two things here, and they don't seem to work together. I think even in your presentation here, we say that the pilot is ended, but we still want to expand it. And I think for me, I'm struggling to wrap my head around either we're doing it or we're not. And look, I'll say this. We very obviously have issues with the program, and I think you've outlined some of the changes that we'd make. But where are we today? What are we doing today around youth diversion?
Sure. So I shared a little bit about that in my presentation. We're actively working on an MOU, which is required with the Department of Juvenile Services to help facilitate this work. So once that MOU is executed, once we wrap up the conversations we're having at an administration level about what this work will look like, final decisions that need to be made on the program, we'll be ready to share that we're gonna launch something. But let me be very clear, I did say in my presentation that Sidestep is no longer active. It was a pilot program, and that Sidestep, as it was known, both in design and by name, will not be expanded citywide. And so that doesn't mean that our interagency youth diversion efforts cease. We're talking about a program that up until this point has been known as Sidestep. We've done this development in partnership with DJS, who is our core interagency partner.
So are we effectively doing a rebrand?
I don't think it's fair to call it a rebrand. I think we've completely redesigned the initiative. And so I'll say two things about that, since there's been so much focus on the name. This pilot program that operated from 2022 to 2024 has received outsized attention. This work is extremely important. We have completely redesigned the structure of what this work will look like moving forward, down to the interagency partners who were involved in it. So these are just not the same things anymore. And in my role as director of this agency, and in partnership with the administration and DJS, have made the executive decision that it will not continue under the same name. This is a completely different program down to its design. But I'll also note, as a point of privilege, Mr. Chair, this work relies on trust. With the amount of scrutiny that this pilot program has received, with the amount of time Sidestep is thrown around like it's a dirty word, maintaining that brand would have had an operational impact on our ability to be effective in this work moving forward. And so for all of those reasons, we will continue our youth diversion work. It will not be called Sidestep, and it will be fundamentally different than the program that was operated in almost every way that we discussed here today. Youth diversion needs to exist regardless of what it's called. And so I hope that we don't get caught up on names. But I hope that you also hear me that it's about—
Director, if I may, I appreciate the criticism that the program is receiving, and I appreciate the intention of the program. I just want to make sure the program works. And I see us talking in circles, so we don't need to do that. Let's just talk about what we're dealing with here. Let's just be honest about what we're trying to do, so that we can talk simply about what's going on. And we'll talk about the program, we'll talk about the shortfalls. I want to understand very clearly the intentions. We know that the program has had its challenges, and I think is now suffering from a name issue, which may mean we want to rethink some of the challenges that we've had, both around invoices, both around maybe kids slipping through the cracks, maybe paying invoices that we should not. We know those things have happened, and that is what it is. So do we intend to do youth diversion, yes or no?
As I stated in my presentation, yes, we do
Okay.
intend to do
And-
youth diversion.
And to that effect, how different is the proposed youth diversion programming that we intend to do from Sidestep? Is it just the tracking and the invoicing and management systems or otherwise? Or is there something fundamentally different that's going to be happening in this new rendition of the system?
So you heard what I shared about the Department of Juvenile Services. We've changed the point
Right.
of referral. So that's a huge change. We used to call this sidestep pre-arrest diversion when we did this with BPD. That's not the same. So we're working now with young people who have gone through a DJS intake conference.
Okay.
So our point of referral has changed. We've built an entirely new data system, entirely new metrics and tracking. We've even had discussions, which some are still deliberative, so I'm not going to share them all here until we're ready, and we can certainly do a future presentation on this work when we're preparing to launch it, if
Sure.
that's something you're interested in. But we are thinking differently about what would qualify young people to be referred to us in the first place, in partnership with DJS, who is the referral partner.
Sure.
So those details
the key
are
difference
different.
I'm understanding between Sidestep in its pilot form and what we're proposing with DJS is instead of the arrest happening and an officer referring a child directly to Sidestep, the arrest will happen, they will go to DJS. DJS may then refer them to whatever our diversion programming is. Is that the idea?
Correct. And then
Okay.
the next part of that process is once they come to Monty, they go through an intake, them and their parents, the young person and their parent. They're then connected to a host of community-based providers, and those are relationships that we monitor and manage and oversight.
Okay. Very helpful. Yeah, because I feel like we're talking past each other. So if you could help me understand, how many young people actually participated in the Sidestep program? When I went through the report, I saw different numbers. Can you tell me how many young people went through the program?
I don't know if I can bring back up the slide, but as I shared, 51 young people went through the Sidestep program when it was a pilot.
And in the report, the youth opportunity coordinator noted 55. How do we end up with that discrepancy?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The YOC, the youth opportunity coordinator, the person who was sort of diverting young people to resources, they were the main point of contact. They noted 55 young people. How do we have that discrepancy? What causes that?
Where was that noted? In an interview or in
In the report.
documentation?
In the
Whose report?
In the IG's report.
I guess I'm asking, was that quoted from an interview with that individual, or was it based on documentation?
don't
Because
know.
I can say today definitively 51 young people were referred and participated in this program. I can't speak to what
Sure.
that former employee shared.
And that number comes from who? Is that from the police department?
That number comes from our internal data systems. When we are referred a young person, when we're working with them, these are the records that we have in our system.
Okay. Yeah, I think in the report, the IG details some of the challenges that we had with tracking young people, just making sure that they actually made it into the system. And this is one of those examples. We note here in the presentation 51, the YOC noted 55. The numbers kind of fluctuate And I guess the question for me is how could that happen? How can we end up in a situation where someone quotes one number and our reports say another number? I think that's what I'm trying to get to. Do you understand what I'm asking here?
I understand.
Okay.
So as I look at the Inspector General report, it appears that that number was shared in an interview verbally. So I think that's first and foremost. I can't validate that. Secondly, as my team and I went through all of the data from the Sidestep pilot over those 3 years, there may have been an instance or two where we saw a duplicate entry. And so that could be another reason why you might see this. We want to make sure that the data we're sharing here is unduplicated data, that this reflects individual young people who were referred in each of these years of operation.
Now, we paid, as a part of this, for an evaluator. We paid about $25,000 for an evaluator for the Sidestep program to, tell us whether or not the program worked, how well it worked, some of the pain points of the program. But the evaluator noted that they had trouble talking to some of the nonprofits that we partner with. They requested meetings with them, and we were not able to connect them with those nonprofits. In fact, they were told that they could not talk to certain folks. Can you tell me why that is? Why wouldn't we want to have our evaluator that we're paying have a conversation with some of these nonprofits to understand the services they're providing? And why didn't we do that? What prevents the evaluator from having that access?
No, I appreciate the question, and I'm happy I have a chance to respond to this on the record. The evaluator was selected by the prior director. The evaluation started around the time of my transition and becoming the interim director of the agency. The evaluator, when you read the notes that they share in their report, and I did meet with them at the conclusion of the report. It was the only time actually that they met with me was at the very conclusion of the report when they were sharing their findings. They had never come to agency leadership with a request for data, a request to interview people. The work that they did, don't get me wrong, it was helpful. It allowed us to affirm some of the things that as interagency partners we already had been some of the work that we had done as interagency partners that we've identified were opportunities for improvement. But, for us, if that request doesn't come to me as the director, if the report, as it indicates, the only person they spoke to from MONSE was that youth opportunity coordinator, I went back through all of my messages to see, did I miss a communication? No, that request never was elevated, unfortunately.
Would there be any reasonable reason why they wouldn't have access to one of the nonprofits we work with?
Not that I can think of, no.
Okay. I'll turn over to my colleagues if you guys have any questions. Councilman Blanchard.
Yep. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. First off, I want to sincerely apologize for missing the We Are Us breakfast this morning. So my wife and my younger one have been sick the last couple of days, so it's been hectic, but I love that event. I also, I'll start by just saying that I think that what MONSE does is some of the evolution of the office over the 5.5 years, whatever the mayor's been in office, is exactly the type of stuff we need more of in the city. I'm just such a big fan of the work. I'm a big believer in the work. I see it in my district with the summer youth engagement strategy. I see it with the movement team who's supported through, funds, related to y'all and all that type of stuff. So I think this is, and I also think that trying to stand up a program and expand it fast, and then also doing work where a lot of the people involved on the, I guess you call it the client side, as well as potentially a lot of folks doing the work, right? Because you want people who have lived experiences who match those folks. I can see that leading towards all that sort of leading to a situation where like they're problems and oversights and those types of things. And getting all that like fleshed out is, ironed out is a really important part of just having broad public trust and confidence that the program, Monty as a whole and all the programs within it continue to expand appropriately going forward. So I think it's good investigative work by the Inspector General's team. This is helpful to be looking through it. A couple questions that I have. So first off, going off of the chair's point around what is next for the youth diversion program, it sounds like, Director, you're saying that the diversion would be tied more towards intake, and so DJS has the intake responsibilities, and it would be tied towards that, and that's being worked on figuring out what exactly that would look like right now?
Correct. So DJS, they'd be responsible for making the ultimate decision if someone is eligible or meets the eligibility requirements for that diversion. They would share that referral with MONSE, at which point we conduct our own intake with that young person, really to understand what are the best services that are needed to connect that young person to, what are their interests, how does that inform us. We've done a lot of work in preparation for a future rollout. That includes, building a roster of community-based partners. I think we have upwards of 70 to 80 partners who are interested in supporting this work in some way, shape, or form. But we're still finalizing that MOU. We're still having conversations with the administration to really finalize the details. But our goal is absolutely to ensure that we can accept referrals. We know DJS has been enthusiastic about having a partner that they can use to connect young people with services, and this work is extremely important. So we want to make sure it continues, but that we do it in the right way.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And Mr. Sheriff, if I remember correctly, going back to last year when we had DJS, we invited them here and they talked and Monty talked. I do think that whole intake, what to do after intake thing was a pressing thing that we sort of identified as a problem with that system.
You're getting ahead of my questions, Councilman.
Okay, well, I'll go. I'll go
But
back.
yes, that is,
Okay.
I think, a really important challenge that we saw and we've been discussing with DJS. Essentially, that drop off for young people after an arrest.
Yeah.
Kids would get arrested, and then they wouldn't make it to their court date. But what, and maybe I'll if I could slide this
Yeah.
in there,
Yeah,
because
please.
I think it is relevant. One of the issues that I understand we had here was in instances where young people either didn't finish the programming or, so actually, just if you can answer this question for me, what happens if a young person either is not connected to services or refuses to continue with services under Sidestep?
Under the former pilot program, how it worked?
Yes.
Okay. So under the former pilot program, if we got to, let's say a BPD officer said this was an eligible young person, they made the call, they referred it to that Monse Youth Opportunity Coordinator, and we attempted to do an intake, but that young person indicated they didn't want to participate, they would then be referred back to the Department of Juvenile Services. I mentioned 48 out of 51 of the young people that we engaged with in this program successfully completed their placement. We do have details on the 3 that were not successful in their completion. In one case, we had a young person who was in the custody of DSS. They ran away. And so we were notified by DSS of that. So obviously they were not able to continue in the program and were not located. We had one young person who refused, and we had one young person who ended up getting a placement in a different program before they completed their intake process with us. So this was all back in 2022, 2023.
And how many people were referred back to BPD?
I don't have that information. I don't believe any were referred back to BPD.
And I think this is one of the pain points that, and I think the councilman's question that he was getting to, in instances where, let's say, a young person runs away, if they are, if they're diverted from getting to our justice system, we send them to a program for resources. They make it only a day or two into that program and don't finish. That young person not held accountable to any services that they should have actually had, and they kind of just end up as a loose end. I guess the question that my colleague was trying to get to was how do we address that going forward? How do we make sure that there are no loose ends for young people in this new partnership with DJS?
Absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, I mentioned sort of ongoing tracking with DJS. So as we're working with young people, as they're referred, there will be a different kind of active management with the Department of Juvenile Services to make sure we're accounting for every young person. If there is a young person who needs to be paper referred back to them or needs to go through that process because they've been given the opportunity to be diverted as we move forward, as a way to show that, you know, they're having an opportunity to be diverted. If they don't take us up on that opportunity, if they're not successful in complying with the terms of that diversion, then they have to be held accountable in the same way that they would have. So moving forward with that active management with DJS, we'll be doing that together.
So DJS would then pick up from there if they didn't finish the
Correct,
program.
and then go
Got
through
it.
the process. I mean, we're talking about, if you have the slide with some of the offense types that were a part of the pilot program, some of those same offense types, shoplifting, larceny, possession of a controlled dangerous substance, destruction of property, misdemeanor assault. We expect those eligibility categories to continue, but we're talking about first-time offenders. And so these are also some instances of offenses where that young person may, after their intake with DJS, just be released back home to their parents without a connection to service. And so this program is really seeking to fill that void, if you will. And it is extremely important that accountability is a core piece at the root of that, as well as what I mentioned during our presentation around ensuring that for any of these offense types that involve a victim, that we're also using that as a moment for a restorative conversation where appropriate, or for a different kind of accountability as that situation calls for. Also just providing victim services to that person. And so these are some of the things in preparation for the future of this work that we've discussed with DJS, that we've discussed with BPD, given their, you know, rich feedback on this topic from the Western District experience, to make sure when we do this in the future that we're checking all of those boxes and that no one is falling through the cracks.
And I'm going to give it back to my colleague. Just a clarifying question here about how this worked before, because in an instant where a young person is arrested, they're diverted through the sidestep program, they don't finish the program, they get arrested again later on, would that be considered a first offense because they were never actually convicted of actually doing anything wrong?
Can you restate that one more time?
So sidestep is for young people that commit a first offense for a category 2 offense, theft, so on and so forth. If a young person steals from someone, we catch the young person, we arrest them. We then say, hey, you can do the sidestep program. They say, sure. They get into the sidestep program and don't make it very far. They drop out of the program. They then get arrested a few months later. They have not been tried or convicted for doing anything. So then that'd be another first offense, technically.
It would not.
It would not.
It would not, because
Okay.
Each of these offenses, while there was an opportunity to divert first-time offenders, there was always an incident report that was logged from the police department. So just because we're talking about a youth diversion program, that doesn't mean that you don't, this has been, and I appreciate having the chance to talk about it because it's been
Sure.
something that I've seen misreported as well. This doesn't mean that you're diverted and then that assault isn't showing isn't tabulated with the number of assaults that happen in the city that week. These are still
Right.
incidents that are recorded. We still have the identification of who was involved in those incidents. And so BPD would have that record about who was previously engaged by police, who was previously arrested, and they would not be considered a first-time offender.
So that would be a part of their record, so the next time that they're arrested, they would not be eligible for a sidestep?
They would not be eligible, no.
Got it. Okay. Councilman,
That was like the rest of my line of questioning for that one. But so, and I will just say that I think that between BPD, DJS, like the sort of ecosystem around it, like I can see how that got into the position it was in with the previous director of DGS and everything. And I do think this would be a great topic for a future hearing to get a better, clear sense from MONSE, BPD, DGS of like how this is getting ironed out. The other thing that I kind of have just, it might be more of an observation, but it sounds to me that MONSE was determining success based off of like enrollment in the program.
It will be based off of completion of the program. So part of the intake was the development of an individualized plan. Some of that may have been meeting certain needs that that young person
Right.
identified, or the terms of their placement. So with those 15 participating organizations, each one has a slightly different model. They would need to complete that, to its fullest to be considered successfully completed.
Understood. And I will going back to noting the IG's report of the recidivism rates from the 2025 report were pretty high. And I think it's, I know there's always pressure for agencies and offices to have the happy numbers, but for being able to fully understand the program, I do think that knowing, right, like literally it's called sidestep. So I think is whatever the next thing gets figured out is important to be able, it's important to have the recidivism, looking at those numbers, I think, up front as part of it. So it's like who's enrolled in the program, like are they completing the program, all that type of stuff, but also like are we actually getting these young people away from these types of behavior, or are they going through the program and there's probably some benefits, but then they end up doing that stuff again. So does that seem reasonable, Director?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we come before this committee, we share the numbers that we have for recidivism when it comes to the group violence reduction strategy. I mentioned that when we talk about the future of this work, we want to make sure that we can measure recidivism in partnership with DJS in a similar manner. And we
Yeah.
measure that cumulatively. We're looking at it over time for participants who are actively enrolled in our services and those who are maybe have completed their services in the GVRS context as well. One thing I'll say, so I mentioned during the presentation, during the pilot program, that 6-month metric was established as the success metric for the program. Some of that, and while I wasn't in the design conversation, some of that I think had to do with the fact that we're typically working with a young person in the context of sidestep, maybe between 3 and 6 months. And so that 6-month metric is kind of capturing what's happening during enrollment in the program, because we're looking at 6 months after their intake with us or referral to us. What I'll say though about the data that the Inspector General included in the report is that yes, it's a higher number when you look beyond the 6-month mark, but we're still talking about 60% of our young people who did not recidivate, who participated in the program over that longer period. And so that's not something to minimize either.
Sure.
And I think, absolutely, we're having this conversation rooted in lessons learned, opportunities to improve. But it's important to put that in perspective as well.
Yeah. Do we have any sense of what and if not, I totally understand, but do we have any sense of what like the control group, which I guess would be any young person? Because I would imagine if you are a 15-year-old who gets in trouble for shoplifting is probably at and doesn't have any of this, doesn't go through the process, is also at a very high risk of recidivating in the next year or two as well. Do we have any sense of what that number is?
I don't, but would be interested in that.
Could I make that a committee request of this, however that 40% number, and I know this is like a,
Yeah, what is the request, Councilman?
yeah. The, so it's, oh, I guess this would be for DGS.
Yeah, I think that that's probably more appropriate for them.
Sure, sure. Can we, I guess we can't make a committee request to a state agency who's
We
not
can request it.
here.
We can request it. We can make sure
Okay.
you guys can
Would
certainly.
I
sure
make
the right
this to
people-
Mr. Snella and then?
No, you would make it, the chair would make it to DJS,
Okay.
not the administration.
So I'll,
We can forward the request to
Yeah.
DPS.
Okay.
I'm sure they'd be happy to share it.
okay, yeah. So of the youth who were committing these types of crimes that were intakeable crimes for sidestep, what was the what's the general recidivism rate? So that way we could compare it to
kids in
the
the program.
kids who actually went through sidestep.
Yeah, I understand. We'll make sure we share that with DJS.
Okay, awesome.
Got it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I want to go back to a finer point because something doesn't exactly make sense, and I want to clarify this. When I asked about kids that are arrested and sent to sidestep, this is a pre-arrest program, so there would be no record of an arrest. I think that's the whole intention of the program, right?
So that's an interesting point. I mentioned when we originally had this, if you look in the original violence prevention plan, you'll see
Right.
sidestep pre-arrest diversion program. So while that young person had an opportunity to be diverted, I mentioned that there was still an incident report always for those crimes. So I don't want to give the impression, nor should anyone watching this have the impression that those were somehow undocumented or off the books.
So we would still have, we would still have the incident noted, but we wouldn't, the whole point was that a young person would not carry this on their record, that we'd give him an opportunity to get on the right path. But in an instance where they fall through the system and we don't catch them, there's no accountability, and they could very well end up back at the beginning of this process, committing another Category 2 crime and not have an arrest on record. There may be documentation that a crime happened, a theft or something like that, but you may not necessarily see that on that young person's record because it wouldn't be tied to that young person. What I would like is if you can you please clarify that for me? Because I think it's really important for us to understand. I will say this anecdotally, as I've been talking with DJS, and we've talked about this, or talking with folks in the community, the thing we hear time and time again is the same kid being arrested 5, 10, 15, 25 times. And I could not wrap my head around how that would happen. Now, I don't know if this at all played a part in that, but I do want to understand that if that is a part of the problem that we were seeing, that we make sure that if we expand this and do this with DJS, that we fully resolve that problem, because we end up doing our young people a disservice if we don't actually help them properly when we do get them in our hands. Is that clear?
That's clear. And I think, I want to be careful to not take what was the structure of the sidestep pilot program and apply it to
We're
what's
trying to
happening in
learn
the
from it.
future.
We're learning from it
yes.
is my point. Because I want to make sure that if we misunderstand the problem, we might actually make the mistake again, is my point.
For sure. I think it is important, like we're talking about these certain, just not even all Category 2 offenses that we're talking about from an eligibility criteria perspective.
Sure.
For some of these cases, yes, it's absolutely important that we're using each of these and the future of youth diversion work to take those first-time offenders and do the early intervention work where we have an opportunity to, with the goal of them not cycling through the system. But I do want to point out that the future of our youth diversion work, at least in terms of what we're discussing right now with DJS, that's not directly focused on some of the young people that I know have been highly covered in the news, where we're talking about attempted, murder. Like, that's not a
Sure, that wouldn't be Category 2.
No.
Right.
No.
Yes. So I think if we can clarify that, I'll make that an official request of the committee. I just want to clarify in instances where in the previous system, it was a pre-arrest. It might help us understand where some of the faults existed, where some of the faults existed in the previous rendition of the program, okay?
Yeah. And Mr. Chair, I will offer that the director did just clarify that for the committee.
No, I don't think we did, because the clarification is you're saying that it was documented that an event happened. Someone was robbed, something was stolen. That is very different than child X stole something, and the next time we come into contact with child X, we know that they stole something.
So it'll be known because now they're going through that DJS intake process. They've completed what's
Right,
happening
this is
with
for the
BPD.
new system.
Correct. And so I
Yes.
don't want to apply any standards from what we're talking about in the past to what's happening in the future because they're completely
Totally
different.
understand and agree with you 100%. I'm looking at the old system.
I don't know how to answer that question though or clarify.
We're talking about the old system today. The new system doesn't exist. We are drafting an MOU with DJS right now. So I want to make sure that we understand the faults in the old system.
Correct.
So that we are 100% sure we don't repeat those faults in this new system, especially if we have expanded access. We're looking to do this citywide. We're working with a state partner. I want to make sure we get it right. Is that clear?
That's clear, Mr. Chair. And I think the hypothetical situation that you just raised would not happen in what we have designed and developed with DJS, precisely because DJS is the one making that determination.
Understand.
It's recorded,
We're
and anyone who
speaking the
comes
same
back
language
through
here.
will be there. Yes.
I understand. That's why I asked the question.
Correct.
So we want to understand why we had issues before. So that we're talking about
So this is an
sidestep.
example of a
Not-
lesson learned where we have already in our design put that process improvement in place that will be a part of the youth diversion work moving forward.
Potentially, but I'm not sure that we understood until now that that was a problem.
We understood. That's why
Oh,
we've used
okay.
it to adopt and redevelop and redesign the work that we're doing moving forward.
So if we knew that was a problem,
What problem are you referring to specific? I don't know if we're talking about the same thing.
okay. A young person gets arrested for shoplifting. That young person comes with an officer. That officer refers the 16-year-old to the sidestep program. They get referred to services. They don't finish the program. They drop out of the program. We don't have any documentation because we're not keeping that documentation, right?
We never said we weren't keeping that documentation.
We don't keep the arrest record because it is a pre-arrest program, or it was a pre-arrest program.
We had the incident report from.
We have an incident report. We know that an incident happened, but it's a pre-arrest program.
Pre-arrest, so as we've had further conversation with BPD, if you ask BPD today, they would argue that it wasn't technically a pre-arrest program. We use that language, but because an incident report was created, that for BPD would classify as an arrest.
So the young person would have a record?
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Chanel White, Chief of Staff for Monty. So I guess I'm trying to give an example of the best way to look at it in
Yeah.
comparison to something else. And it would be not exactly like, but almost like a stat in adult court. If you committed this incident, it's documented, it's there,
Right.
it's on the record. If you don't do anything else, you complete the programming successfully. At the end of that, whatever the magistrate, I guess, in the youth, would put it to the side as long as they've completed the program successfully, and then it goes away. Same thing as in adult court, like it's a stat. They have a period of time that they can't make another infraction, and then that charge goes away. So it's not that it's undocumented. It's not that we don't have the report. It's that they are following the program. And at the end of the successful completion, then it's closed out. If they did not successfully complete, then it was referred back.
And the hypothetical that you mentioned, it would not happen in the new way that we're developing this, in the new process, specifically because the process doesn't
understand the new
start or stop
process.
with BPD.
I'm still going to make this request as a committee request. And the committee request is to understand in instances where young people don't make it through the system, they drop off, or they're not successfully referred to services, what happens?
They'll be referred right back to DJS to face whatever accountability they
Not
would have
in the new
faced.
program. Because in the new program, we are working with DJS, and that's a good thing. I support it. I agree with you.
I don't know how to answer
I
your
understand
question.
I understand how DJS would solve the problem, because DJS keeps record of it, and those records are protected with DJS. In an instant where in the program we had before we were going through DJS, they wouldn't necessarily have it. My request is if you could provide an answer in writing on exactly how this works, so that I can be very clear
You're asking how the new program works or the old program? 'Cause
how
you
the
keep
old program
mixing it
works.
up. How the
Yes.
old program
Yeah,
works.
yeah.
If
We're
in
not talking
pilot
about the new
phase,
program.
They would still be
We'll
referred
do
back.
another, we'll do another hearing on the new program when we roll it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking about the old program. I want to understand the problems that we had in the old program, so that when we roll out the new program, which I am supportive of figuring out how to support our young people. I want to be crystal clear here, but I want to make sure we understand the problems. If we don't understand the problems, we are doomed to repeat them. So do you guys understand the request?
You would like an understanding of what the process was during the pilot program for what happened if someone did not successfully
That's
complete.
correct.
And then do you also want to know, or you've received your answer today about what
I
would happen?
want to make
moving
sure
forward?
that when it was a young person considered a first-time offender again, if they dropped out of the program.
Yes, and I want to make sure we're not confusing of the existence of a police record with the colloquial usage of young person having a record. I think that may be part of what's happening here. There is an incident report, so that,
I would be very, we don't have BPD here, but for an officer, when they bring a 14, 15-year-old in, what are they looking at? What information do they have in front of them?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do they then determine whether or not that young person is eligible for sidestep? Are they only checking whether or not there's been, certain records, or that's my question here. I just want to make sure we're crystal clear in that regard.
okay. And I just to say, appreciate your question. We can put that in writing, and to be very clear, to those watching this hearing, moving forward, that hypothetical would not be possible
Should be
in
resolved
this
because it's
situation.
going directly to DJS first.
Correct.
I agree. So we
And
should,
would be
we
referred
should
back
be
to them.
resolving this problem. yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know my other members have questions. Councilman Gray.
Thank you. First, I want to start off by saying, as always, thank you, Monty, for the amazing work that you guys do, playing an important part. And what we're seeing is this historic drop in crime and creating opportunities for our youth to be able to leave the life of crime and find something more productive, as evidence with so many community partners that actually are on the ground doing the work that all of us and none of us up here can do. And so I just want to thank you. I also want to thank the OIG. This is, I think, the first time we've had her here in the chamber. And so I am going to use that opportunity as a teaching moment for everyone to learn a little bit about the OIG's office, because I think it's very important that when we have such an audience that we use that to, so people can understand how processes work. We hear so much about Muncie. I feel like everyone is expert in it. So my first question for the OIG, for OIG Cummings is, could you just walk us through how your office typically conducts an investigation from start to finish?
Oh, thank you. I think honestly, the better person to do that would actually be my deputy, because he is the head of investigation. One thing that I while listening to this, I think is important that I mention is that our investigation started in about June of '25. And during the time of the investigation, we were told over and over again that the program was going to be continuing. And it wasn't until they learned that the program sunset.
So, not to be rude, I understand that. I'm just trying for, once again, for the public's knowledge, how it starts, and not this particular one, but just in general, how investigations, how they typically are conducted from start to finish.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate the question and the opportunity. So all the Inspector General, all the Office of the Inspector General's investigations begin with a complaint and information that's provided to our office, whether it is an anonymous source, confidential source, or a city employee. And it's important to note that we don't just do investigations, but we also do whistleblower cases, as well as our office also, the Inspector General oversees or helps to oversee the Ethics Board as well. So the investigations, when we receive complaints, oftentimes some people are fearful of retaliation, so they don't always give us their name and information, which is fine. We take the information, and within the last year, last fiscal year, we received over 800 complaints. The information we receive comes several different ways. Sometimes someone will tell us and come in person, or tell us in person of an issue. It'll also come in through our email system. We have a hotline email for the office, as well as by phone, where people are able to leave voicemails. We also receive sometimes random phone calls from employees saying that so-and-so gave me your number, I want to report an issue. Other times, they'll reach out by, several employees at once will sometimes reach out with a formal complaint. So from there, our hotline team reviews all complaints that are received, and they respond within 48 hours to the complainants. We aren't able to provide updates on investigations as we go forward to those complainants. However, if the complaint is not for our office, we will refer them to the respective agency or entity that may better address their problem or issue. Oftentimes people call us and we commonly hear them say, I'm calling you guys because you guys are my last resort. In those instances, we always review the case and see what we can do to help. Sometimes it's for an entity that's outside the city. We're very aware of our jurisdiction. It relates only to city government and where the city's money flows. Those complaints that are received that are relevant to our office are reviewed with the Inspector General and the hotline team. In those review meetings, it's discussed and triaged from priority complaints to complaints that may need to be referred out because we have limited resources. Complaints that do move forward from just being a complaint are put on a pending investigations list. The pending investigations list, once an agent is able to take on a new case, we assign them off of that pending list to the respective agent that will be handling the case. That agent works with their senior special agent on the case, and they develop an investigation plan for the case, which is then approved by myself and the Inspector General. And then from there, they begin to investigate the case, which oftentimes involves a lot of background work. That background work can be reviewing communications, can be reviewing contracts, can be doing research on the topic at hand. We are more than willing to admit that we are not subject matter experts on everything we investigate. Oftentimes, we'll reach out to entities for background information. For example, in this case, we would reach out to someone who maybe does have experience in youth diversion work, so that we get that understanding of what it means to do that work and have progress in that work. After the agent completes their background work, what they'll do is they'll then begin their active portion of their case, where they'll be interviewing, speaking with everyone involved, as it's important that we remain objective through the interviews. Our cases follow evidence-based methods. We do not go off hunches or assumptions. We are going solely based off evidence and the information that witnesses provide. The information that's provided, we do everything we can to corroborate that information. We practice holistic investigations, where we want to identify the root cause as much as possible. I'm personally a big believer in process improvement strategies and root cause problem solving, as I think oftentimes it's not necessarily one individual, it's more so the administrative process attached to it, where sometimes the failures or gaps that need improvement are. After their investigation's complete, we issue a report after it's been thoroughly reviewed, edited, analyzed. In our office, we'll often have an agent who knows nothing about the case read through the report to do a cold read. We want our reports to be simple enough for everyone to understand in terms of the plain language. It's a little difficult sometimes due to the technical aspects of some cases. Those reports are then sent to the city administrator, the mayor, city solicitor, and the agency leadership that are involved in the report. The full unedited version sometimes can be over 100 pages, very lengthy with exhibits. And then from there, we give a time frame, typically about 2 weeks to the agencies to respond back to us. So we receive their response, review their response, and then we'll prep it for issuing publicly along with the response that we receive from the agency.
Which is the synopsis we get in our emails, correct? Can members of the press or elected officials call in the hotline to start an investigation? Is that, so when you say anyone, you literally mean anyone,
Yeah,
correct?
I've received things from mayors, I've received things from council, definitely. We get tips from everyone, and I'm sorry, we don't treat anyone more special than anyone. We work for the people. So we make sure that the tip is valid.
Right, and how's that follow-up usually? Like if a member of the press or or if elected member?
Sure. There is no follow-up. The only follow-up per se is that I neither confirm nor deny that we have an investigation, because if we don't treat every complaint like that, our office can be used as a weapon. And that is something that we have fought very hard to keep. We want to make sure that when people give us a complaint, we're not giving them updates, we're not doing any of that. It's not till the report is issued, and that is when we will speak a lot. So that's the time. It's not till after the report is done. And after it's been issued to, the process. And, sitting here, I'm sometimes wondering why we don't actually send some of the reports to council too. I mean, the bigger reports, because, in this particular instance, the report was much bigger than what the public saw. And you're absolutely right, we have not been in front of you, really. I come every year for the budget with my board, but this entity does exist, and you have the ability to do things. So it's an important question that I ask myself now. Why are you not getting this, so that we could have a more robust conversation? I don't know.
Yep.
It's something that we should probably think about.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer.
Of course.
My next question is roughly what percentage of your investigations are proactive rather than complaint-driven? Because you spoke about the complaint-driven portion, but is there any investigations that you guys do that are proactive?
No, everything we get comes from the public, with 800 complaints a year, and there's been 5,400 and some in my 8 years. We don't have the ability to sit around and do something like that. We are reactive to what we're given. We work for the public. So no, there's no investigation because we want to do something. That's not the way this office works. It's the public's office.
Thank you. That would be my first round of questions.
Okay.
Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you so much. IG Cummings, welcome to our chamber. I'm going to follow up on that line of questioning here. The 800 investigations that you referenced.
800 complaints.
800 complaints. Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification. How many of them actually turned into investigations?
Excellent question. Well, we in our annual report, I believe, did we do 40 last year?
You did 40
Roughly, but
out of 800.
roughly, but what's important is we do referrals.
okay.
And referrals are critically important. That means that it basically passed a preliminary inquiry that it's logistically valid complaint. And what I would do, and in fact, the DPW case last year started as a complaint.
Yeah.
And then we ended up doing a referral.
Okay.
In the referral, they told us that they fixed this, and this.
Okay.
Unfortunately, trust but verify, we went out and we realized nothing was done, and that started that. So
Okay,
referrals
perfect.
and getting the information back from the administration is also critically important. If you get a referral that involves public safety, you have 1 week. If you get a referral that's just a normal thing, you usually have 3 weeks.
So let me understand the process,
Okay.
just to kind of back up a little bit, and if
Okay.
possible, if we can get that in writing, that would be great.
Oh, yeah.
So, because I really want to understand the threshold by which you're turning the referral into the complaint, and I mean, from the complaint to the referral to the investigation. So we had 800 complaints last year. You had 40 that were demonstrated in your annual report. What was the threshold by which you did not include the other 760 complaints?
A lot of them, from what I recall, like, we get something, for instance, like, there was a whole bunch about SNAP.
okay.
And so there's things that, but I have a very good rapport with the Inspector General that does it, so we
Okay.
were sending stuff that way.
Okay.
You know, the office sometimes, like Matt said, is people's last hope.
Yeah.
And we get things from everywhere.
Okay.
And anytime, and I tell my hotline team, you know, we can't just say, we need to tell them where to go.
Okay.
So if you look at what my team does, we have a whole list of places.
So like
with-
more resource driven?
Yes.
Okay. So
Because
let me.
people don't know, and not everybody has the time.
Yeah.
But we have people that's their job.
Okay, thank you for that. And let me ask this additional question. With regard to, again, you mentioned 800, was that FY '25 or calendar year '25?
That would be within the fiscal year, I believe.
Fiscal year.
Yeah.
Are you able to share aggregate information, aggregate data with regard to the types of complaints? So not having any type of PHI associated with it, but aggregate level data, so we're able to see kind of the breakdown of that
Like-
800?
40% DPW.
Okay,
you know,
perfect.
30% mayor's, whatever.
Perfect.
Yes, that I thought we had in the annual report. Did we not? Did we take it out?
No, I'm looking for a little bit, because I pulled up
I'd
the
have to
annual
check,
report. I was
yeah.
looking for a little bit of granularity
Okay.
related to those 800, and so that's an official committee request,
Okay.
sir. If we can get that information
that.
sent to the council, because I really want to understand kind of the 40, but also the other 760.
Yeah.
But I also want to make sure that we as the council understand the threshold by which you all are engaging in investigation, and I think the public should be, the public should understand that as well, because I know you've done considerable investigations on quite a few agencies, and so there has to be some sort of transparent nature around that as well.
Almost every agency
Okay,
we've done.
and I assume that you all are doing it like in a systematic way in the office, SOPs related and things of that
Yeah,
nature, right?
we have a standard operating procedures manual. We have the public one that you can just see online,
Yep,
and then we have the other one.
okay, and the public one online, does it go through this process as well?
I'm unsure on that one. I will say, though, that typically, we often carry, 10 to 20, sometimes maybe more than 20 pending investigations because of our resources. We only have
Yeah.
9 agents in our office currently.
Okay.
And oftentimes, it's not necessarily it's definitely not from the lack of complaints or the lack
I know,
of
yeah.
cases. The vetting process that goes into reviewing the complaints, I always think our cases kind of dive into 3 different categories.
Okay.
Sometimes there's outright fraud, even potential criminal implications. Sometimes it's process issues, administratively, contract, what have you. And then other times there's a health impact, whether
Okay.
it's to the employees or to the public.
Okay, that makes sense.
Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we did a case involving DPW where a chemical vendor was not being paid. So potentially, they say they wouldn't be able to provide the chemical to DPW, in which DPW manager said this would cause a Flint, Michigan-like crisis if we don't get this chemical.
Okay.
Luckily,
We got it.
They got it, you know, with a short amount of supply left. But those are the kind of the three areas that we look at. Also, when vetting complaints, we're looking at what is the impact of this case? If we receive a call.
And who determines impact?
Well, I think the team, I think that.
And, I mean, what standardized way are you determining impact? Like, I'm trying to understand the definition of impact.
Right. So the definition of impact to the case is, you know, we look at, like I said, is it a health issue? Because if it's a health issue, it's a priority. That's why with DPW, even though we got a referral.
And the health department as well. I know you all took some leadership on that. Great.
Right, the health department. And then just recently, we went out to another facility that we'll probably be issuing out to the public at some point. But those areas always take priority because the health and safety is that important.
Of city workers?
Correct.
In the
Perfect.
public.
Per-
In the public.
Oh, and the public.
Of course.
Okay,
Correct.
perfect.
The water situation
Yep,
would
I
have
was just
definitely
wondering, okay,
impacted the
that's good.
public.
Okay.
And DPW impacts the public.
Perfect, okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Right, improper conduct, any type of integrity issues, anything like that nature, you know, that could affect others is also important. And then also financially. So
Okay.
if we get a call saying $600,000 was misappropriated, that one may take a little bit more precedence than if someone calls and then there was a theft of a $10 stapler or
Okay.
something of that nature.
Perfect.
Not saying that's happened.
Yeah,
but
no,
just,
I
you know,
understood.
as
And that's a great
I'm on the,
Yeah.
just off my mind now.
Yes.
You know, but so the impact is one thing. But then also the other part of it is what information is being provided with the complaint.
I see, okay.
So if there's an anonymous source that says, we think this is going on, but there's no evidence to support that, it's a little difficult to go ahead and investigate that.
So that actually leads into my next question. And Mr. Chair, this is my last
Yeah,
question
it's
for
like
this
your fourth
round.
question. I'm sure.
No worries, no, I mean, you know, like,
We can come back around.
No, we can, yeah. And so, I mean, this is pertinent to the whole investigation and kind of I just want folks to understand the process. And again, just last question for this round.
The fourth question?
Last question.
What's your question?
Thank you so much. You know,
I want to hear the question first.
oh no,
See
I
if we
think
could-
we should be able to ask the agency the question.
Let's come back around. Because I'd appreciate, you know, going into IG and what they do.
But I think it's pertinent to the conversation, though.
Absolutely is. I just want, you've got like 4 questions already in. So I just want.
But I mean, Councilman Blanchard got how many questions? There was a whole conversation going.
We'll get back to you. Thank you. So I want to get back to the issue at hand. So this, the Inspector General identified fraudulent invoices submitted by community-based organizations, including 2 altered invoices and charges that could not be verified. Can you tell me, Director, a little bit about what the controls are in place in the office or at the time and what has changed since? So let's start with where we were before, how we handled invoices such that this could move through, and what are we changing?
So thank you for the question. So based on the information that's included in this Inspector General report, it appears that using the investigatory techniques that the Inspector General uses, reaching out also to third parties to verify information in different ways, that information led to the identification that possibly in 2 instances, we allegedly as a city agency were defrauded, that there was invoice or documentation. I don't know if it was doctored. I don't know if it was overstated on the invoices. This is part of why we're conducting our own independent investigation, our own independent audit, I should say, of all of the past program expenditures to make sure that that supporting documentation we have on file, those invoices as stated, all are aligned with the approved scopes of work and budget for those efforts.
So how do we end up in a scenario where we pay an invoice but don't necessarily get the delivery of the services? How does that happen? Like, how would we verify that someone has delivered the services that they agreed to upon contract, whether it's a grant or otherwise, even a contractor. Like, don't we verify before we pay an invoice?
Yes. But if there is an organization out there that is intent on submitting something that is fraudulent, if they've doctored supporting documentation, if they have submitted something knowingly to the city, that's unequivocally a problem. I want to know who those organizations are because I want to make sure that we're also not working with them in the future. We should not be doing business with anyone who is intentionally doing something to defraud the city.
I'll ask a more pointed question. So one of the things that I noted in the report was around our documentation of young people served. So if I recall in the report, out of the 50-something young people that were referred to services, only 24 were actually documented in Apricot, which is our system for...
That's not true.
Is that not true?
That's not true. All 51 young people were documented in Apricot.
As receiving services?
Correct. I think there was a comment about case notes or other forms of documentation. The system that we used did not allow for those level of case notes to be documented in the past, for certain files to be attached.
So maybe the IG can give me some insight on this, on the investigative report 25-0046I on page 7. It says, according to Monty's internal database, Apricot, only 24 juveniles had a case note entry. So what does that actually mean?
Sure. So all
Yeah.
51 are documented in the system. That meant that the box that was available in the old system for case notes, which didn't allow for time stamping, some of those things I mentioned that are absolutely corrected in the new system that we built out, that box was only completed for those 24.
So explain to me, now we know the young people are in the system, their names are in the system, the 51, but only 24 had case notes. What is the difference between being in the system and having case notes? Does case notes denote that they've received some services, or is that just?
The case note would have been any note about anything that happened in the process with that young person. So anything that the youth opportunity coordinator at the time put into the system and documented. It could have said, I performed this home visit. It could have said I met with this person. It could have said they were referred to this organization. So that's the type of thing that you might find in the
Got it.
case
So
note.
is the youth opportunity coordinator that's responsible for putting in the case notes?
Correct.
And how would we know if a young person actually received services? Because I would assume, and I assumed incorrectly, I guess, that Apricot would be representative of the services rendered. But if that's not the case, if that's just what the YOC is actually saying his interaction or her interaction was with the young person, that's not necessarily the same as the services rendered. So how do we know the services rendered?
So we knew because the youth opportunity coordinator was sitting with young people, was making those connections to the organizations, the 15 organizations I mentioned. There were conversations with those organizations. Do I have the expectation that in the future our documentation is more thorough, time-stamped, all of those things? Absolutely. Sure. But this is what we have in the records from the former pilot program that was inherited.
Right, because I think the challenge I'm having here, and I'm trying to wrap my head around, is we should know to some degree what services have been rendered, because we would theoretically, if we ordered a bunch of computers, we don't pay the invoice until we receive the computers. This is not exactly that. These are services rendered to a young person. So how do we verify that those young people have received those services? Going back to my question before, if they slip through the cracks, we wouldn't even necessarily know it because we're not putting information into Apricot, or at least Apricot's maybe not the way we track it.
So all 51 young people who were referred to us were included in Apricot.
Right,
We're
but-
able to say who successfully completed. We were able to do all of those things. But I think there's something important to mention here as well, because we're talking about, when I say approved, so just to take a step back in terms of the contracting process, when we make an award to a third-party organization, which I'll call a subrecipient, each one part of that process is developing a budget and a scope of work that's approved. As I've shared before publicly on the record, When we talk about the awards that were made to organizations during fiscal year 23 and 24 that went to youth-serving organizations, including the organizations that said, you know, we're here, we're ready to accept referrals from this initiative, they each had a unique scope of work and budget that was associated with it. And so while we're engaged in the work in service of that young people, that young person, we're aware of who we've referred that young person to. We're aware also when invoices come in of what their approved budget was, what their scope of work was. But I think it's important to not lose sight of the fact that when we think about the controls and system and process standards for subrecipient monitoring, the work that we've done with our program managers today, that documentation is on a completely different level.
So what you're saying tracks, but it doesn't completely close the loop is I think what I'm trying to suggest. So I ran a nonprofit before and we planted trees. We planted trees in underserved communities. And when we did that, we would get invoices for the trees, but I wouldn't pay invoices that randomly came in. I would only pay invoices that I knew we received trees for. So much in the same way, when we pay invoices to these nonprofits that are rendering services to our young people, how do we verify that they've actually served said young people? Like, do we have any case notes? And I assumed Apricot and the case notes for the 24 individuals, for the 24 juveniles, was how we would verify they came out to this event. They received said services. They came in for therapy. Like, that's what I expected would be our sort of receipt on the services rendered. But let me clarify, are you telling me that is not how we clarify whether or not they've received services?
So 24 of those 51 entries had case notes entered in for them. There was work that happened that was not documented in the system. And it's part of why we've established the case management standards we've established now. It's part of why we've developed a new system that will make it much easier to log real-time notes that are time-stamped about what activities happening with each of our young people. But the scopes of work and approved budgets, when you look at the number of young people who were diverted in each of these years in 2022, 2023, and 2024. Again, we're only talking about those eligible young people from the Western District. And it's a relatively small number of young people. As an agency, when we think about the responsibilities that we're entrusted with in the context of the Comprehensive Violence Prevention Plan, and this is something that I've shared publicly, on multiple occasions before, we have a responsibility to serve and ensure that we're providing services, supporting services for all of our young people across the city, not just limited to the Western District. And so there are scopes of work, there are approved budgets that are not tied to, it's not like there was a specific formula, let's say I was referred 3 young people and this is how we're processing payment. In terms of how the pilot program operated, that's not how it worked. We had organizations who were prepared to accept referrals. We had a number of young people that was based on who was committing what eligible offense and who was a first-time offender and who BPD referred over to Monsi. And so that work is different. Part of it does concern the youth of the Sidestep pilot program, which we had those 51 who participated. We had 48 who completed. Our youth opportunity coordinator, who was in that role, was able to share what happened with those young people. But it wasn't all documented in that case note.
So what you're telling me is that there are some services that these nonprofits deliver that have nothing to do with the kids that they serve. It's just That's
not what I said.
Okay, I maybe misunderstood. That's why I clarified. So what are you saying then? Under what circumstances will we pay an invoice without knowing that someone has received services? How does that happen? Because if we're going to prevent it from happening in the future, we need to be crystal clear on why it happened in the past. So what I'm suggesting is if we were delivering a physical product, we wouldn't pay the invoice until we have the physical product. How do we verify that young people are receiving these services? It's not a physical product, but we know that they're, you get what I'm saying? I assumed Apricot was the way that we did that, and that the youth opportunity coordinator would either go to a site visit and say, look, I saw the 10 kids in the program, and they seem to be
Absolutely.
receiving services. Johnny did this, Susie did that, so on and so forth. Or we would get some sort of report from the nonprofits that would clarify what they've done and detail it, so that would at least serve as some evidence that we've received services on behalf of these kids. But if we're not entering it into one, is Apricot the system that we would use to verify the services rendered, or is it some other means? And what is that other means if it's not Apricot?
So because you frame your question around what are we doing to make sure this never happens again, let me start there. We have developed a new system. It's not Apricot, it is the Microsoft Dynamics Case Management System, one that will allow us to ensure that there's way less room for error.
Before we talk about what we're doing new, can we understand what happened?
So our Youth Opportunity Coordinator was having conversations with the organizations that we referred youth to. He was going with them at times to their visits there. Unfortunately, not all of that was documented, and it's part of what precipitated us needing to ensure that across our agency, we had a common standard for case management, that we are setting clear terms around data entry. There is much more work that took place associated with this program than I can show you just based on the documentation alone, and that frustrates me as a leader, right? I want to be able to share that. It's also a huge reason why when we think about this work in the future, we're going to have a much more robust way to not only track that information, but make sure we can come before spaces like this with the city council and share whether the work that we're doing has impact or not. And so that's my commitment. That's the work that my team that's behind me has been focused on diligently. And it was a pilot program. We saw what was wrong. I talked about the oversight roles we've put in place. So we want to make sure that we're not having any single point of failure in any of our initiatives. We have to make sure redundancy is there. We have to make sure that that oversight is there fully.
And Director, I want to be crystal clear. I think the world of you. I do. You know that. I've told you that dozens of times. I want to be clear. In any pushback that you see on me, it's only to make the office better. So please don't, we need to understand where we messed up if we're going to fix this program. Because if we're talking about doing this again and spending $700,000 or more to expand it citywide, I want to be able to say that we're not going to mess $694,000.13 or whatever the case is, that those were the invoices that we paid.
So you're talking about 2 years worth of programming, not limited to
Sure.
the Sidestep pilot program. That's all youth opportunity work that was done within our budget over those 2 years, not limited to the Sidestep pilot program, which only benefited those specific young people in the
Sure.
Western District. But we also allowed organizations to support their ongoing work with young people across our entire city. Some of those dollars may have gone to staff positions that work directly with our young people.
Totally
or
understand.
other things, right?
Totally understand. So this is a matter of making sure that we have strong processes.
Absolutely.
So that we don't make the same mistakes that we made 2-3 years ago. And so we have to be able to talk about those issues. We have to ask these sometimes complicated questions in order to make sure we don't trip up on these issues again in the future. And please don't take any questions that I've asked you as anything other than I want us to kill it. I want us to succeed. And in order for us to do that, we have to ask these questions. It's not, you are going to make mistakes. The office is going to make mistakes. That is a part of this work. It's complicated work. Please don't, I don't want you to get defensive about things that have happened in the past. We want to learn from it. That's the purpose of this hearing.
No, and I don't want to come across as
Yeah.
defensive. I think, like I shared, as a leader, it's been my commitment to make sure that we're building an agency that is strong, that can continue to carry out the work long beyond my tenure as director, long beyond the tenure of any of my team here. That requires us to build strong systems. And so, we welcome the opportunity, any opportunity, whether it's from an OIG report or the city audits team or questions from the city council to improve on our work. We want the best for our young people. So.
And I'm curious, how did we identify these issues? Did we know of any of this stuff before? Did we know of any of the fraudulent invoices before the IG's inspection, or did we find out only after?
So we learned of the two instances that are mentioned in the Inspector General report from this report. We don't know who the two organizations are that the Inspector General has referenced in the report. So I only have the information that was provided in that report, right? There is one instance separately, and I mentioned this in our agency response, an organization where an advance payment was paid so that organization could get started with its work that still is unreconciled. And so that's an example of an organization where we're working actively with the law department to make sure we can recoup funds that can't be accounted for. We're giving, those advance payments are given with the responsibility that receipts are kept and that that documentation can be provided to the city, and anything that's outside of what's allowable in that scope of work, in that budget, you know, it will need to be recouped by the city, and we're prepared to take those steps with the law department.
Would you say that this report has been helpful in thinking about what expansion looks like?
The report's been helpful, and we stand by. I think I shared it in my response to this report as well. We see the value that the Office of Inspector General does. We would love to know who those organizations are again, so that we're not working with them in the future, and that we have access as an agency that's making decisions and has a fiscal responsibility to the citizens of Baltimore, that we are doing everything we can do to ensure that this doesn't happen again. With the limited information provided, you know, I'll need to continue my work with the law department and also our internal audit. But, you know, I stand by the work of this agency, and I stand by where we are going with this work in the future.
Okay, I will pass off to my other colleagues. I know they still have questions. Councilman Gray? Councilman Porter?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Mr. Chair, do we have 2 questions? Just 2? Okay. Okay, 2 questions. I'm just thinking that the past 15 questions you just asked and totaling 12 minutes, I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity.
2 questions.
Okay, perfect. IG Cummings, I had a quick question for you. I wanted to ask about the SLAC investigation case. Were they community-based organizations that were contractually connected to MONSE, or just community members in general?
I believe the explanation that was provided to BSIT was just community members. I don't think it was specific regarding organizations for the reason for purchasing this land.
Yeah, because the one of the reasons that you mentioned, you spoke about them having connections, you know, external connections within their Slack messages. And so I just was unclear, was it community members just in general, just talking with community members, or community-based organizations? If anybody can clarify that.
I'm happy to clarify. So I have seen the email correspondence. It predates my tenure, but it was email correspondence, I think, at the time, at the start of the agency, when the decision was made to utilize Slack as that internal communication tool. There was a thought at that time that we might use it to communicate with some people who were outside of the city and who were not a part of the internal team. In practice, it's been an internal communication
That doesn't
tool.
answer my question. Are these CBOs?
Not contractually obligated,
Thank
no.
you.
Not
That
for
is no. Thank you. My next question actually has to deal with why weren't we shared the evaluator's assessment that you referenced in this presentation from 2023? Anyone, yeah.
So we believe in evaluating our programs. We conduct internal evaluations. We contract with other partners. You're asking specifically why it wasn't shared with the city council?
Yeah.
I don't know if we've shared full evaluations in the past. I don't have an issue with that.
Okay.
But there was no specific reason. We contracted that evaluation in order to inform that interagency working group and what our work looked like moving forward.
And how many evaluations have you done since then?
I would need to clarify and get back on that.
Sure. That's an official committee request. If we can get all your evaluations from 2023 to present, that would be great, in its full entirety. I'll wait for my next round of questions.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow back up on the last question I asked, which kind of, it actually rolled around proactive investigations. And I ask because I just want to be crystal clear on what is categorized as a proactive investigation. And so have you found something during an investigation that will prompt an expanded investigation into something else? And would that constitute a proactive investigation, or would you ignore it because it wasn't complaint-driven at the beginning?
If while doing an investigation, we learn of a situation that could be harmful to employees or anything, we will open an investigation. A perfect example was we had an investigation that went one way, and then people started mentioning a certain employee, and so an investigation went into that. Both investigations were going simultaneously.
All right, and so would you categorize it as proactive at that point because you found something else out and then you started to?
Well, we found something out because people told us. I mean, then if people tell me things, and then we'll do a preliminary inquiry, and if we see something, then yeah, that becomes a new investigation based on what employees or people we have interviewed have told us.
Gotcha.
So it's not me, it's the public,
Yeah.
or whoever who's, and that happens more than you do an investigation and you learn something, and then if it turns out to be a valid that could impact people, then that becomes, if we're able to. I mean, Matt has mentioned we have limited resources.
Yeah.
And we appreciate last year you gave us an additional person.
Oh yeah, happy to do that. Much to do like Watergate. You find something and you just keep going, keep going.
I seem to have a lot of Watergate.
And my second question, and I'm just going to lay out all the follow-ups just to make sure I'm not asking more than two. Can you explain what direct access means in practical terms? And then does that include direct access to city technology systems or records involving city employees and vendors doing business with the city? And how does your office typically obtain the materials during an investigation? And if you need, I can just repeat them as we go along.
No, I think I understand it. It's been an issue lately. So there has been the word unfettered used a lot. My office has never had unfettered access to records. My office, since prior to me, has been able to have direct access to all records in city government. But there are oversight measures within, and that is very important. For instance, if we have to do, for instance, an email pull, there has to be documentation, there has to be a case assigned, there has to be filled out, subject, what you're doing, time periods, and signed off by the Inspector General. The person, we even have someone on the team that has the ability, had the ability to pull records and has had that for 14 years. And such that access audits were done on that person, and every year we would fill out what systems we had. For instance, Workday, I can't see, that was cut severely. There's instance after instance where all the different things that we could do if for instance, we have an investigation into time theft, abuse of taxpayer funds. A lot of that we no longer have the ability to look at. So what we're having to do we don't have direct access anymore. We have had to subpoena documents. I have 20 open subpoenas right now. I mean, so direct access no longer exists for the Office of the Inspector General to be able to do our job.
Yep, and with the direct access, I'm trying to visualize it. So at any point in time, let's say someone reports me for, I don't know, being mean to Kimmy. who was my chief of staff. And you go in and never happened. Probably the opposite way around.
That would be an HR matter, and I would probably refer that situation to HR.
Perfect. But in that, if you're
If
looking
you were
through,
stealing money, I would be interested.
if you're looking through and you put in the subject anything that involves Paris being mean to Kimmy, and in that, because you have access to emails, correct? And you see something that says, "Hey, take the P card and buy a car." Is that something that then you would go and investigate? Is that because I think, you can clarify for me, what you just said earlier was like, when you go and look at the records, if you have direct access to emails, you're looking for a specific thing that you have to sign off on. But in that, in looking through that, are you also looking at other things, or is that the only thing you're looking at? And if you find something else in that looking, because I think I asked that earlier, but I just want to be crystal clear on this, because you said what you signed off on was this is what I come to look for. How does that process happen with you obtaining the material and the information?
I think there is a very big misconception sometimes that my office has someone that sits around all day and looks at emails. That absolutely does not happen. We have the ability to pull your emails. Okay, I've never seen your emails, for the record.
They're boring.
Or everybody will know I'm limited in my computer skills,
Kimmy
so I don't
never
see
issued
anybody's
that complaint.
emails. So, but my team, we will put this in a system we have called Logical. And actually, let me talk to someone who actually is better at doing this than the person who is more too high level. So Matt, can you talk about this, please?
Sure. So Logical is a software system we use to help us maintain, that correspondence securely. Our subscription with them provides that secure access. The data that is input into it is secure. Our Assistant Inspector General of IT, when they obtain the information from the city's network, BSIT at any time could see the information and who and what emails are being requested. In our request internally, what we'll often do is utilize keywords. As I'm sure as council members and just general employees of the city, thousands and thousands of emails are given, are received, monthly, yearly. We do not have the time to go on fishing expeditions. There's times where during an investigation, a witness will tell us some information, again, if because of a certain keyword or something like that. For example, if there in your example you provided, if we were looking at communication between yourself and Kenny, and there was a conversation about utilizing the P card, like you said, to buy a personal car, that would meet a certain threshold that would prompt, again, a preliminary review. One thing that I didn't mention earlier that I'd like to mention is that our team received training through the Association of Inspector Generals to be certified Inspector General investigators. They also the majority of us are certified fraud examiners. With that, we obtained that, we have those skill sets to look at some of these issues, especially financial matters. And then the hotline team as well, they go through a preliminary review process. We don't just automatically assign it off the hotline into our agents. We want to prepare them for with all the information we can obtain. During that preliminary investigation, we will look at, for example, are there any city policies being violated? We'll use our knowledge and the city's policies, whether that be the administrative manual, the charter, executive orders, or procurement regulations. We would use that as a guide too, to see where this fits in. For example, the P card. We would look at the P card manual that's available online, and we would say, well, what are allowable expenses? What would require a waiver? What would they? And then we would then go from there. we wouldn't rush a report out, without speaking to individuals that would have that knowledge regarding the P card.
Yeah, thank you, because I think it's very important, once again, that people, my members are here and we have the media here, that we clarify exactly what you guys can and can't do, what you have access to, and how you use that access. As a committee request, is it possible for you to send over to the council like examples of like searches you've signed off on, and like maybe like a trail history of like those investigations or those decisions?
I can send you over a blank copy, but a lot of what we do ends up, they're investigations. I don't really understand would you want me to have something filled out about somebody?
Yeah, like an old
want me to
case,
make
like
you
an
an
example of
example?
something that you've. So if you said we went to search for, not to use a DPW example, but we'll use it. When you went to look for information about what was going on DPW, you said you signed off for exactly what you guys are going to search for, whether that's Workday, whether that's email, any type of technology. You said you sign off on what the search is going to be for, correct?
So typically, when we've had requests for investigatory files, processes, we're not able to disclose them. Oftentimes, any investigation we do, we provide to leadership, which then could, affect disciplinary proceedings, things of that nature, which would then be classified as it could become a potential matter of litigation at that point in time. I believe those requests have been denied previously by the city's law department to those entities. The other, just from the other perspective of it too, even putting someone's name out there in the same breath as saying they were involved in an OIG investigation could harm their reputation. Individuals could see them as saying, well, they're involved in an OIG investigation, they must be doing something wrong. That is not the case. Like I mentioned, our intention is never to be adversarial. We do not make disciplinary recommendations in no way. We want to help, improve areas where we can, and honestly just provide the information to leadership so that way they have the full perspective. For example, in the Department of Public Works matter, sometimes a lot of information that goes on operationally doesn't always make it to the top of the agency's leadership. So that's where our reports, I think, bridge that gap of information so that, together as a city, we can always move forward.
Okay, so I guess you guys, just because of the sensitivity, you guys aren't able to provide those types of things.
I'll give you a blank one.
We could definitely provide
Yeah, if you could, I would love to just,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
of course.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. This question is actually just for the body. Will we be able to have another opportunity to follow up on this hearing post today before the budget?
Before the budget?
Yeah.
We can try to figure it out.
Yeah, in IG Cummings, I think, the work that you're doing, amazing. I think that it's an opportunity for us as a council to continue to really understand what you do, what you are allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, kind of demystifying these public perceptions that you have of your office, and also for Monty as well to really, you've been before us quite a few times. And so again, just creating that level playing field for all public safety agencies. And I would also extend that opportunity to the, state's attorney's office. Like, there are public safety agencies that are within our purview that will provide us an opportunity to have a full scope of public safety in the city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay.
I'm sorry, is that a commitment? What was the commitment? I'm sorry.
I'll have to check my schedule.
Okay.
To figure out if we
Is it
can
going to be
squeeze
in
it
June? Maybe June?
I'll take a look.
Okay.
I don't want to commit exactly now, but I will try to get something down.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, we'll have another conversation with the IG on the 6th.
Yes,
May
yes,
6th.
May
So-
6th. But I'm talking about we should be having regular.
Like this exact
Yeah,
conversation
regular
about
meeting, maybe
this
like a
issue.
legislative oversight quarterly meetings. IG, I know you're busy, but having an opportunity for, you to address the council on a quarterly basis would be very advantageous.
So interestingly, in the charter,
Right.
the IG is supposed to come before the city council once a year to talk about her reports and everything, and that's something that I think we've
Well,
never
I
done that.
do, but it's
Yeah,
just the
she
budget
did,
hearing.
yeah.
Oh,
It's the budget hearing.
But I would
And so that's
actually
what I'm
very
saying.
much
Your-
like-
Yeah,
I
your,
think, like,
your
having-
authority as chair, like you can call a legislative oversight hearing at any time. And so
fair.
it would be a great opportunity to have a full scope of public safety and all the work that you're doing in collaboration with all these agencies. It will also help us to determine financial and fiscal stewardship of our resources in the city as well. Thank you.
I
May
agree.
may I add one thing?
Please.
One thing that's very important to me, and I know to you and the public, is the fact that my office can no longer protect the citizens because I don't have the ability to monitor my databases. So that, I may be the head of whistleblower, but I can't protect my citizens. I can't protect anybody that tells me they want to say something anonymous because I just don't know if people truly understand that since January 23rd, there was always basically a Cold War. There was BSIT and there was OIG, and when they both had exactly the same ability. And BSIT always knew what we were doing because they could see it. We would do our polls or whatever it was, and they knew, they always could see it. But we could see if they went into us as well. Well, effective January 23rd, we lost the ability. And so at that point on, BSIT could go in at any time, and I would never know that the public, that the people, the whistleblowers, all my materials I have with the federal government, everything I lost the ability to protect. And so being as this is such an important committee, I think I would very much like the opportunity to tell and to talk about it.
That's I think, a very, very important concern that I think undergirds the broader conversation around access and what that means for your office. I appreciate that sensitivity. Okay, we have covered quite a lot. I'm gonna, if I actually still have questions, but I'm very sensitive to everyone's time here. I know there are some folks that may want to testify. And so we'll open up to public testimony for folks that are here for testimony. First up, I have Damian Rogers, or Damon. Press the button on the right.
All right, cool. Good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, I just wanted to thank the council for just, having these opportunities, these educational opportunities help me out a whole lot. I wanted to thank Monsi for the partnership, and also wanted to thank IG Cummings and Matt for just providing that information because it really helps me understand, more of what I see on the news and things of that nature. But I'm Darren Rogers, Executive Director of I Am Mentality Youth Male Empowerment Project, and I'm one of Monsi's partners. So we provide school-based violence intervention programming at Emerson High School. Just as a backstory, I'm a lifelong resident of Southwest Baltimore, graduated from Beachfield, West Baltimore Middle, and Emerson High School. So personally and professionally, I'm invested in that community, and I just wanted to speak to just the impact of the programs that are being provided. So some of the education and the information shared today is really pivotal because as an organization that partners with Monsi, I'm seeing the movement of some of the adjustments, the addition of workday, how the receipts are submitted. So all of those things I think are moved into practice. And I think that's really important, just for oversight as a whole, because not only am I, committed to I Am Mentality, I'm committed to the forward progress of Baltimore City as we're in this renaissance. But I think that just the work that we're doing in the school-based violence intervention space is really transforming Southwest Baltimore. It's helping young people with opportunities for employment. There are multiple resources that are being provided, such as mental health resources, job training opportunities. opportunities for young people to take agency within their schools. So for an example, we partnered with you guys on the mayor's cleanup. So we had about 60 young men who started a cleanup at Baltimore Hilton and walked it all the way up to Emerson High School and ensured that the Emerson High School grounds were clean. So, you know, a few weeks ago, we partnered with District 8 for their leadership conference, which opened up opportunities for young people to learn how to be civically engaged, and the young people at Emerson High School worked the table. So some of those things are just really helping us out, and not only is it helping the school and giving young people a space to feel, you know, more safe, they have the opportunities to share with us, you know, opportunities for violence that may be happening in the community that may, you know, actually spill over into the school. We have ambassadors within the work that we do. So I just wanted to share that piece because I do know that, you know, the overall goal is for us to have, you know, clarity and transparency in every single thing that we do just so that we can be successful as a whole. But there are some really great things that are happening within our city, and the school-based violence intervention program is one of them. And it's my hope that we can continue to fund that program and we can continue to make the type of impact, because I do see it as an opportunity for large-scale relief for Baltimore City, and as I'll wrap it up really soon. So, and I know this is a result of the school-based violence intervention was a result of the shooting that happened at Emerson High School, and one of the young men who was shot was a young man that I mentored in my program. So I just came here to stand, you know, stand in support of Monty and Baltimore City as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. And I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just I realized we didn't put the timer up, so you had no sense of how long you had. We do 2 minutes every time.
How many minutes did you give me?
I gave you 4.
Okay, cool.
I gave you 4. I don't want you were on a roll, man. So I don't want to cut you off. But
right, thank
it's
you,
2 minutes. I appreciate you. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Next up, we have Joseph Broadway Evans. Mr. Evans. All right. And do we have anybody else that wishes to testify? You are welcome to come. You got 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good.
Bear with me here.
How's it going, Uncle T? Good to see you. If you could state your name for the record, and we'll give you 2 minutes.
Yes, my name is Terry Williams. I'm the CEO of Challenge to Change Mentoring Program in East Baltimore. So good afternoon, Chairman and the members of the Public Safety Committee. As I stated my name and my position, I am here today to express my strong support in the work being done through the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Across our city, we have seen firsthand the positive impact of their effort, particularly in violence prevention, community outreach, and building trust in the neighborhood that have long been neglected and also not much supported. Monty has created pathways for credible messengers, grassroots organizations, and community leaders to engage directly with those most at risk. This approach is not only strategic, it is necessary. By investing in relationships, intervention, and prevention, Monty has helped to shift the culture in our communities from reactive to proactive. Through our work on the ground, we have witnessed how these initiatives contributed to safer spaces for our youth, stronger connections between residents, and opportunities for transforming rather than incarceration. Programs like this are essential in breaking cycles of violence and creating long-term sustainable change. Baltimore challenges are definitely complex, but Muncie, committed to collaboration and community-centered solutions, is a critical part of this progress we are seeing. Continued support and investment in this work will allow organizations like ours to expand our reach and deepen our impact. Before closing, I want to definitely say I'm not a stranger to this work. I had a son that was gunned down in Baltimore City. Unfortunately, he had to go on the scene and see my baby boy all shot up. Muncie definitely gave us hope. Just being able to be there in many different ways. But the impact that I've seen it make over the years is beyond measure. And I believe that I always say, and I say it strongly again, that greatness will always be measured by impact, not by nothing else, not by titles, anything else of that nature. And so I'm here to truly express how important it is to support Muncie and all the great work that they do.
Thank you, Uncle T. Appreciate you. Anyone else wish to testify? Please state your name for the record, and we'll give you 2 minutes.
Corey Winfield. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. From a guy who's been around since the beginning, 19 years ago, to be exact. I've did some great work with this city, Councilwoman Porter, put some great work in with her as well. I've been around a lot of administrations from, last 19 years. This is the first administration that I've had that actually really cared. And with all the faults that we might say we might have, they're willing to step up. And that's all I ask, is just step up and take a chance, opportunity to help save our kids, help save the youth that's dying in our streets. From being me seeing out there, seeing young men and women riddled with bullet holes in their body, having the opportunity to just reach out and just call on Stephanie, the director, for anything that I might need, and she's always there. Even Councilwoman Porter stepped up and gave me some turkeys when my household and the projects didn't have nothing to eat. She came out and really supported. So what I'm saying is that I love y'all, and whatever I can do, I'm always gonna be there no matter what. This shirt is just a job, it's not my life. My life is saving lives, and I've been doing it on the front line for 19 years when we didn't have no money. When I was standing in front of guys with guns and I made $12.88 an hour. So now that we got money, we got a whole bunch of problems. But let's look at this, let's come together and save lives. And I know we need oversight, just like we need the police, and I'm saying that as a Safe Street guy, we do need the police, right? But we also need Muncie as well. It's just like we need you, Mr. Conway. You know how I feel about you. I say you every time I see you, brother. I know you care. And I didn't have this back then, so now I do. So I really appreciate it. So let's come together and figure out ways how we can strengthen Muncie and make them better, and strengthen us and make us better as whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Destiny Wooten. I'm standing here today in a place I never imagined I would be, but in the same breath, I'm here to express my full support and gratitude of everything that Muncie has done. Just a little bit of backstory. October 20th, 2025, me and my brother were shot, ultimately ending my brother's life and saving mine and that of my unborn child, whom I was 7.5 months pregnant with at the time. Being a survivor of violence is not something I chose, but it is something I'm learning to rise from piece by piece and day by day. In the middle of the most fragile times of my life, I found support where it truly mattered through Muncie. Muncie has been more than just a resource. They have been a lifeline. They have provided guidance, safety, and real tangible help when everything else feels real uncertain. But beyond that, they've shown me genuine care. The kind of care that reminds me that you are not alone, that your story matters, and that your future is still yours to reclaim after tragedy. The weight I've been carrying hasn't disappeared, but it has lifted in many ways I didn't think were possible because of the people that I have in my corner at Monzi. And that support changes everything for me. With Monzi by my side, by Dylan's side, my family's side, even though that tunnel feels long, I can see the road ahead. So I just wanted to express my full support for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is James Taylor Gaiman III, and you can also call me Deacon Gaiman, if they call me at church. But I'm here on behalf of the We Are Us. I am a life coach and a mentor. I am through the DJS, also with Safe Passage. I'm supposed to be at Dunbar right now, but I have someone over there covering for me. I also do community engagement walks. And I think Monzi, I'm here to support Monzi. I was listening to things y'all was saying, listening to the questions they was asking. There was things going through my mind, but I said no. But the thing about it, I was born in 1967. I'll be 59 this year. Coming up back then, I didn't have programs like we have now, like with Monzi. We didn't have these type of different organizations. Uncle T and them, Safe Streets, the Peace Team. I didn't have that stuff. Y'all looking at that same guy that was under the bridge on Franklin and Martin Luther King that had all them tennis shoes lined up. That was me back then. And I realized, I used to look at all the trouble that was going on with them young kids. And I said to myself, and I said, God, if I ever get out from up here, I know what I gotta do. So now, I'm the head deacon at my church, and I'm pretty and proudly glad to say that because of Monzi, I'm gonna brag about Monzi and the mayor's office, I am able to give back the things that I never had. I can freely get back to these young kids. My phone, I got 5 clients under me right now that I'm working with through DJS, that's a DJS, but they not arrested. They on the streets right now. 2 of them are on the box. But they still call them. They call them. That's why I get up a couple times and go out. They text me. They in school, but they won't let me know that everything is all right. One of my clients had court. His mother called me and told me, thanks to you, Mr. James, my son is okay. He did everything he's doing. They doing what they supposed to. It's that mental. Some of these kids, young kids, they need that some of them have the male figures in their life. Then it all depends on the upbringing of them. You know, I'm over time right now.
Appreciate you, sir. Do we have any folks looking to testify virtually? Please use the raise hand function. Going once. Going twice. Oh, please. Elaine, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Elaine Arndt from Maryland chapter of Moms Demand Action, which is a grassroots gun violence prevention group. I just wanted to say, with my colleague and friend Denise Reed, wanted to thank Monzi for providing a way for us to successfully interact with survivors of gun violence, particularly. Wanted to thank them for their robust victim services unit, which, as Ms. Reed can tell you, is been something very important to people in the city. We believe that victim services is public safety because part of breaking the cycle of violence is critical to the functioning of a public safety unit. So just wanted to highlight that, say thank you, and also wanted to highlight the Office of the Inspector General because we do follow your work. It's hard to follow sometimes, but really appreciate it because that we want to see government entities working together successfully in a way that is providing ways of improvement and pathways to improvement. So just wanted to express that, and I don't know if Denise, you have a quick comment.
To our esteemed panel this afternoon, thank you, sir. I did research on you for about 2 hours last night because I wanted to learn about your passion and also this esteemed Isabel Cummings and Matt. I did search on you because I like to know who we are part of and representing. I am Chaplain Denise Reed with the Western District Police Department, serving the city of Baltimore for 15 years next year. I lost my precious son, Tavon, and 7 other loved ones to gun violence, including my mother, my nephew, my sisters, 11 members of my family being shot. But I want to thank this magnanimous woman, Miss Stephanie Mavonis, and her team. 3 years ago, with the senseless mass shooting in Brooklyn, her heart and soul was boots on the ground. And so we want to just applaud you and your team for just doing phenomenal work. And I want to thank you, sir, because I only knew what I saw most of the time with your face frowning on the social media, but you have a heart and passion.
I smile a lot.
So you have a heart and passion for our wonderful city. And so again, Ms. Isabel, I want to commend you as well, because I know you have a work to do. And most importantly, at the tragic mass shooting in Brooklyn, I had a chance to speak to Governor Wes Moore. And oftentimes our children are affected by ACE, adverse childhood experiences. And there's a medical term that if they're affected by, a trauma from the age of time they were born to age 18, that is still in their soul. So Governor Wes Moore said, I still deal with adverse childhood experience. So if our governor has dealt with that, what are our children going to deal with? And last thing I'd like to say, my nephew, he lives in Howard County now, and he's been dealing with trauma for 44 years. My sister died from substance abuse, and it took us 35 plus years to help him heal. He was shot by gun violence. He was accused of shooting someone. But we just can't give up, Mr. Conway. We cannot give up on the children. I get it about the numbers, as Stephanie shared, and about them, maybe one assault, 2 assaults, but we cannot give up on our babies. Last, I'd like to leave Isaiah 58, verse 12. We are called repairs of the breach. God bless.
Thank you. All right, any other folks looking to testify? All right, we're closing public testimony. I want to close out by thanking both of the agencies here. Your work is absolutely critical, both to holding the city accountable to addressing fraud, waste, abuse, and inefficiency, and 2, figuring out new and innovative ways to support our young people. And I said this in the middle of the hearing, and this is who I am. You knew this was going to be a tough hearing. We had a conversation about it before, but all done in respect, because I think the most of you, and I know what we are capable of if we can just get things right. We have to be honest about our faults if we're ever to address them. And we know we intend to do youth diversion programming going forward. We know we had issues in the first rendition of this program. We know that we weren't doing a great job documenting. We know that kids maybe have fallen through the cracks, and we know that we maybe mistakenly paid some invoices. But it's only in instances where we're able to talk about those things to where we can figure out how we don't make those same mistakes again. And if there's ever anything that we all learn from this conversation, it should be that we should be able to talk about our problems so that we can repair them. That is the purpose of this hearing. That is the purpose of oversight. That is why we need to have these discussions. And this is why we need an IG, that it can do the deep digging that is necessary to help identify these issues, or else we wouldn't even be having this conversation. And at the end of the day, and I said this in the beginning of the hearing, our kids deserve the best. Even our kids who have made mistakes, they deserve the best. They deserve a chance. And if they just slip through our fingers because we weren't paying attention, shame on us if we don't figure out how to close our fingers and hold and grip them tight. So I feel, and I know the work you guys do. I know how much you care. And I know we sometimes don't always get it right, and I know you'll fix it. That's the part of having this conversation, and it is my duty and my responsibility as chair of this committee and us as committee members to make sure that we help you do that. So thank you. With that, this hearing is in recess.